basically you take the best things about drinking and using. It has very little to do with what it actually does for you. And it has most to do with the community you're building around those unhealthy things.
Welcome to Self-Made and Sober. I'm your host, Andrew Lassise with selfmade-coaching.com. And in this podcast, it's my job to interview people who are not only crushing it in business, but have also struggled with addiction in the past and are in long-term recovery. Be sure to join our Facebook group where we help entrepreneurs grow and scale their business at facebook.com/groups/SMC Mastermind, like Self-Made Coaching Mastermind. I hope you enjoy the show, and be sure to subscribe and rate the show afterwards so you can get notified each Friday when we put out a new episode. Welcome to Self-Made and Sober podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lassise, and with me today is Jake White from Party.0 and Vive 18. Jake, how are you?
Yeah, I'm wonderful, Andrew. Thanks for inviting me onto the podcast.
100%, man. So why don't you give us a little background on what Party.0 and Vive 18, what you're doing with that, and then we'll get into, sort of your background. But why don't you give us sort of a breakdown on what your businesses are?
Yeah, basically, they do the same thing. They're for different audiences. So what we do is we help young people make good decisions around vaping, drugs, and drinking. And then we actually help them throw these massive parties without any drugs or alcohol. So it's educational, but then we have an action item at the end for them to get involved and kind of start a positive movement at their school.
Awesome. So I know when I was in college, it was all about drinking and partying, and I'm willing to bet that your experience was not the same. Or was it, and that's what caused it to happen? What's your background in the party scene?
Right. No, I mean, you pegged it. I actually tell people, like, I was one of those nerdy kids. I did not want anything to do with using anything that changed my body or my mind. I had actually watched my uncle go in and out of the hospital, in and out of jail, and eventually have his life taken from, dealing with addiction. And so I knew that's a direction that I wanted to stay clear of. And it was funny because in college, it was like your key to socializing it was drinking, it was smoking weed, it was anything but just being you at a party.
I never thought about that, but you're absolutely right. The only way to have fun is to not be yourself.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, get
it's a good observation.
And it was weird because, in high school, I had goofy, weird, nerdy friends too. So we never held ourselves to any sort of standard like that. So I was going to these parties considering, like, all right, I need to go to hang out with people and to meet people and get the college experience. But the more I was there, the more destruction I saw and thought, all right, I don't want to be a part of this. I don't know what else to do, but I don't want to be a part of this. So I became silent about being sober, because in college, what that means is, well, if you're sober, you're probably arrogant, thinking you're better than, our decision to drink and use, or you're over religious, or they would think, and you're in recovery too. So they could think those three things about me, but what it boiled down to was I wasn't going to get invited to things, and I was going to isolate myself if I told people that I was sober. That was my mindset for a couple years. And eventually I actually read the statistic that nearly 30% of college students were just like me. They didn't use any drugs. They didn't drink. But for 2 years, I hadn't met anybody like that. So I kind of questioned the statistic. I'm like, well, is this actually true? And as I was considering that, I realized, well, as outgoing as I am, if I'm here hiding my own decision to be sober, why would anybody else jump out of the bushes and be like, hey, I'm sober, want to be friends? Like, that would never happen. So what's probably happening is this 30% is hidden somewhere, like they're not sharing who they are. We're not meeting at parties and events because you wouldn't meet them there. So if I want this social environment to change, if I want to create a place where I can have fun and make friends without the pressure to use anything like that, I'm going to have to create it, or I can't really expect it to happen. So that was kind of my mindset going into it. And I can kind of tell you how it blossomed from there if you want.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So at first, right, I knew I wanted to change something. I knew in order to change it, I was going to have to take action. And so this idea kind of struck me. Like, the house party is super fun. You know, it's kind of dirty. It's cheap. It feels like adventure. You walk to a random house. I just didn't like that one element of it. And so I thought, all right, well, what if I threw a house party without no keg, no drinks, and just had an excuse to get together? And I went to my buddy Steve and I asked him if he would be on board to helping me with this. And I actually didn't expect Steve to say yes, because he's this good old Wisconsin boy, you know, loves his cheese, his Packers, and he loves beer. Like, he is Wisconsin through and through. But he actually told me, Jake, I would love to do that with you, because I drove home an hour and a half every single weekend my freshman year because I didn't want to drink. I thought it would jeopardize, you know, my academics. And I could see this being really useful. Let's throw these house parties without any alcohol, without any drugs. Let's do it. I'll help you with it. Even though Steve wasn't really sober. So we partnered up and we decided to do this thing. First week of school came, we got a notebook and a pen, and we met as many students as we could. And we were just talking to them for about 25 seconds, enough to get their name, to tell them our name, and then invite them to a sober party. And as you can imagine, we were kind of scared. Like, we didn't really think people were going to respond well to it. But at the end of the day, we had met 129 people. And out of 129 people, inviting them to a sober house party in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, 120 of them said yes and gave us their phone numbers.
And these were 120 just random people, not even knowing that. Were they sober people, or was this just a random selection?
This was a random selection. Like, we didn't know anything about these people. We just met them, literally walked up to them for the first time, met them, and then invited them to a house party without alcohol. And I see your face, man. And it's like,
yeah. I was, you know, my brain was going ahead in the story, and I'm like, and let me guess, this is where 0 people showed up and you had to pivot. Wow. 120 people have 129. That's a pretty good percentage.
Oh my God. We were blown away. And we were in disbelief. We were thinking they all lied to us. Like, these are fake phone numbers, because the math doesn't add up. If 30%, you know, out of 129, maybe it should be 40, 42 people that should be saying yes to this, but over 90% are saying yes. Like, that's weird. So we decided, like, okay, we've got this list. The people have said yes. Our next logical step is now we actually have to throw the party and see what happens. And here's what I was thinking too. You know, we invited people to something to their face. They would feel rude if they said no. Maybe that was it. So this is the real test. Let's throw the party and see if people come. We get in Steve's apartment. We get our friend Brian to DJ. We go to Walmart and get those like 5-gallon jugs you see at soccer practice. And we fill it, one with grape Kool-Aid, one with cherry Kool-Aid. Because the cheapest thing we
Gatorade,
can do.
The Gatorade things you pour on the coach after the big game.
Absolutely. Exactly. So this is our party. We've got a DJ. We've got 2 5-gallon jugs of Kool-Aid. We have a foosball table. We're going to play beer pong with water. And that's pretty much it. We have some like outdoor games because it's still good weather in Wisconsin in the fall. And we basically text our list, 120 people saying, hey, party tonight at Steve's house. Here's the address. You know, bring your friends, not your booze. We're partying sober. And wait, the night goes on and we start noticing people are coming in groups. So a few groups come in and it's been about 15 minutes. We're directing people into the house, and Steve and I kind of like, all right, well, let's go in and check on our party and see how everything's going. And I will never forget this. Steve and I opened the door to his apartment and the place is packed from wall to wall. We counted, there was 85 students packed in this 1-bedroom apartment, and it is the most awkward thing you've ever seen in your life. Like, the DJ is going, he's having an awesome time, the time of his life. Everyone else is so packed together, they can't even dance, they can't move. They've been drinking Kool-Aid, so it's not like they can pretend they're having a good time. Like, they're in the right state of mind. They know this is the worst party they've ever been to. And one dude just yells at us from like the middle of the dance floor. He recognizes us from outside. He's like, "Hey, this is your party?" And we're like, "Yeah, what's going on?" He's like, "The Kool-Aid's gone. This party sucks." And he just storms out. And that dude, within another 15 minutes, everybody had left the party. It was a total disaster. And Steve and I basically looked at each other and said, "Dude, we totally failed. This was the worst thing people have probably experienced at college so far. We either have to get good at this right now, or we need to quit and stop telling people we're going to do this sober party thing."
So you experienced failure right off the bat, and you decided you're going to keep pushing through with it. So,
yeah,
because I think the approach on it is really great, because a lot of people, they'll be starting like a side hustle or something, trying to quit their 9 to 5, and they'll dip their toes in the water on something new and something scary. And you have the market telling you, yes, we want this, even though despite you probably have that negative self-talk, like,
yes,
I'm putting myself in your shoes and probably thinking that exact thing. Like everything you're saying in the story, it's like, yeah, they probably said that because it's to your face. Like, let's see if they actually show up.
Right.
And so, I mean, the biggest gripe at this point is you didn't get enough Kool-Aid, I guess. I'm guessing that was a good learning experience for the future then, huh?
Right. So, no, absolutely what you're saying is true. And I think what I had to realize, and looking back on it now, I can say this, but I didn't know it in the moment, was everything that was out of my control went well. There was a demand in the market. People liked what we were offering. They gave us their phone numbers. I couldn't really mess that up. I guess I could. The way we invited people was great. And then the party, everything that was in my control, which is what you do at the party, what's your venue like, what do people actually have to do, how are you going to create connections, all the stuff I hadn't learned, it made sense that I failed because it was my first time trying something. So I think it was helpful that Steve and I did this together, so we didn't get totally crushed by that failure. But starting with that success of getting 120 numbers, we're feeling like on the clouds. And then we immediately get humbled because our party sucks and we suck, like we just had to realize it. And all right, it makes sense. It's our first time doing it. Let's try it again and let's make this thing work. So that's kind of where the next step went, is we contacted a fraternity and said, "Hey, you guys have the best house. You've got tons of space. You've got a basement. You got different rooms. Here's what we're doing. I don't know if you'd be into it, but we want to throw a sober house party at your house." And they actually, to my surprise again, were on board. They're like, "Let's do it. People think we're only about drinking, but we can party sober too. Like, let's do this." We invited the same people back. We're like, "Hey, the first party was terrible. This time we've got more room, more games, more Kool-Aid." In fact, we went to Red Bull. We told them about our experience. We went to Pizza Hut, told them about our experience, and they are going to sponsor our party. So not only do we have music, DJ, games, we got sponsors now too. So next party went up from 80 people to 120 people. They had a great time. We started learning what makes a good party. How do we create connections for people in a mindset like they're still in their mind? They're nervous when they walk in, but how do we disarm those nerves and get them to connect with someone right away so that they're making friends and they're not in their head so much? We learned how to do that. We learned how to keep people there longer, because as soon as you start making friends and you get involved in a game or competition, you forget everything else and you're just engrossed in the experience. So we learned how to create these moments for people where they're making friends, they're having fun, and they're finding community. in a way that's different than what they're used to. So our attendance from there rose to 150, 200, 250. And this is where the kind of entrepreneurship story begins. Is I was blogging about this in my public relations class and posting pictures online, stories, and people from around the country started messaging me saying, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, I'm that one sober kid on my campus. I can't find anybody like me. I don't want to go to these other parties. They're just not my scene. How do I do what you do? And so my thought was, wow, if I could actually teach people how to do this for a living, that would be the coolest job ever. And that's kind of where that story began and how we validated the idea of sober house parties and why it's a thing today.
So your starting in this was really just scratching your own itch. And then the market is saying, this is something that, you know, you can actually sink your teeth into this. And it's really cool hearing about this. Just, you know, I mean, I look at my college experience 10 years ago and it was like, I'm trying to imagine college without drinking. And,
right.
You know, and your experience is you can have fun in college without drinking. And to me, I knew a couple people who didn't drink. And when they told me they would have fun, I'd just be like, you can't have fun if you're sober, like, especially not in college. Like outside of college, it's like, okay, party's over, like time to get a real job, time to grow up. But like in college, you don't even have the social stigma to not be like destroying your life.
Right, exactly. And it's so funny because like you said, your environment like reinforces this idea like, oh yeah, this is what we do to have fun. We go out, we get wasted together, you know, and you bond over that. You bond over that shared experience. And until somebody invites you to something different, I think you don't realize it's possible. Like even when I talk to professionals in the higher ed industry and I'm telling them about my program, they're in disbelief saying it can't happen. And we've worked with schools like Indiana University, Mississippi State, like D1 schools with insane party cultures. And we get the same result every time. Around 9 out of 10 people are opting in to get invited to these parties because number one, they want to be included and they feel valued by someone walking up to them and inviting them to something. They feel accepted. And then when they go to the party, they have a good time because basically you take the best things about drinking and using. It has very little to do with what it actually does for you. And it has most to do with the community you're building around those unhealthy things. So just switching it and the way we brand our parties and attract people and build hype is just kind of like this secret sauce, this system we've built that's able to kind of disrupt this expectation you have of the college experience. And then when we started getting these same feedback from high school students saying, dude, I mean, we're using wax pens, we're smoking weed, we're drinking, and some of us aren't into that, or we don't want to get into that, but we feel like it's our only social outlet. That's when we moved into the high school and middle school market with Vive 18 to help those students too. But same model, same platform of starting with a speaking engagement to share the story and then empowering them to use our model to throw sober events for their own campus.
So what does it look like if somebody wants to be involved in either of those organizations? Do they pay like a franchise fee, or how does that structured on the business side of things?
So the really cool thing about students who want to get involved in this is it doesn't cost them anything. Our model is that we know schools are hiring speakers every single year. They have a budget for that. So we don't want to create a new product in a market that doesn't exist. If somebody is interested, they contact us. They can go to Party.0.org or Vive18.com, and they can send us a message. From that point, what we do is we contact their administrators at their campus, and we introduce ourselves, say, hey, you've got a student interested in starting a really positive movement at your school. Would you support them by bringing us in? So they pay for everything. Then what we do is we actually give them our playbook for exactly how to throw these parties. Here's how you develop a team to help you out. Here are the roles that need to be taken care of. Here's how you get sponsors. Here's how you promote. Here's how you throw an awesome event that gets people having fun, get people loosened up, and get them connecting with each other, even if you're not serving alcohol. So everything is laid out easy and simple for them. They just execute it, and then we're there to support them. So basically, what we tell people on the speaker side when we're talking to administrators is we can tell them, listen, most speakers can come and share a really inspiring story with your students. They might influence them for a day or a week. What we're doing is our story can actually stay with your school, because when we leave, we're not only leaving your students with a platform to impact their campus for years to come, which is going to provide value like way after we leave, but we're going to stay on call for those students for an entire year. So if they're going through this platform and they have questions or they want to run ideas by us or anything, like we are literally a phone call or a Skype call away. We want to support them and make sure that they're successful, and then brag on them. Like, let's make sure that these students are getting press coverage, because this is newsworthy. Let's make sure they're getting awesome sponsors, because we don't want you to pay for these things. So it's all built in to this platform and the business model of using speaking, so that the students don't pay for anything and the attendees don't pay for anything.
Really, the idea, I mean, it's just your product is actually the speaking engagements and getting your foot in the door with there. And I guess it's just like a lay down for, I mean, I can tell you, I've seen millions of speakers and keynotes, and, you know, the impact is exactly like you said. There's, you know, I am extremely motivated immediately afterwards. And
Yep.
there will be that fizzle out where it's like, okay, back to the real world. Like I saw Tony Robbins a little over a year ago give a keynote, and I was like dead tired. And I didn't even, like, it was on my bucket list to see him. So I was like, I had gotten to the event at, I think I woke up at 4 a.m. and this is like 4 p.m. and he's the last speaker. And like Gary Vee was just on earlier, and he was really cool. And it was like, I guess I'll stick around just to see it. And then he comes out on stage and he's got like those sticks that he's smacking together. And he's got a room of like 3,000 people, like in suits and ties, like jumping. And it was an incredible experience. I remember I got home about midnight. He completely rejuvenated everything. And I get home and I say to my wife, I'm like, my life is completely different. Like, I'm not the same person you thought you knew. Everything has changed. Tony has changed my life. And then I wake up the next day and it's like, back to the grind.
Dude, it's so true. You get fired up. And I think it's literally, when you think about taking in information, we're only able to take in a certain amount. So you probably have this one thing you learned from Tony's speech. And even from that entire day, there might be just, one or two things you took away and you implemented, because our brains are capable of doing that. So to be able to offer something beyond the presentation for the industry, it's like, oh, no, duh. Why wouldn't we want to bring these people in? They do all the same things that everybody else does. They're good at it, but then they leave us with something sustainable that's going to impact our community.
Do you have like statistics of like drinking incidents, like before and after your events, to use as like, hey, when we come and speak at universities, like drinking related incidents goes down? Like, do you have any sort of information?
Right. No,
that?
I wish that I did. And this is something that I learned pretty quickly, is that the industry, higher ed in general, college and universities, they like that information. And it's really expensive to get, and people will use it. So I guess I could go to a school that didn't have Party.0, look at the statistics, and then look at it afterwards and claim that I was the one who did that, even though there was so many things they were doing.
But any test in a vacuum is going to have a million different factors. And whenever they have, like when they do case studies, they will find the case study that substantiates their claims.
Right.
And then within some, so I mean, like in general, I guess you could just look at like the drinking related statistics before and after your event in whatever time frame needs to make sense. And you could say, maybe there's a correlation, maybe there isn't, but we have statistics to prove that before we went into the school, there were, I don't know, like 20 related accidents each weekend. And then after we came in, there were 10 or so, whatever the numbers say. And I don't know if that's too high or too little or
right. Yeah.
Something like that. But
right.
I think, I know if someone were pitching me on something like that, would be like the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
If it doesn't resonate with me, where I know just myself 10 years ago, I'd be like, oh, you're coming to throw sober parties? I mean, if you've got the track record, though. You have the experience, so it doesn't matter what I think on it. Like, I can't tell you that you didn't have all these successful parties beforehand.
Right, exactly. But you're right, though, that people numbers help validate, and people like that. So in the meantime, I think that in the future, we will have more of those numbers. I wish I had them now. But what I tell people is there's these basically top methods when you're thinking about preventing underage drinking and helping students make smarter choices. And so the first one is positive social norming, which is saying, hey, listen, not everybody is out making destructive decisions. There's a lot of students who are not using drugs. They're not drinking. So that's a method that people use. So what I tell people is that's one of the best methods. And we take it a step further, because sure, you might have a poster that says 30% of students don't drink, 60% of students drink responsibly. But if every weekend all they see is people getting smashed and throwing up and peeing on people's lawns and like doing things that signify like that's a pretty crazy night, and they're obviously drinking excessively, and you're not seeing those people drinking responsibly, or you're not seeing the people who are doing something else, where's the proof of that poster you just put up? We give that poster life and the students an opportunity to actually get involved with it and enhance their social life. So if, your poster's right, but I still don't have anything to do on Friday night, I'm going to go out drinking, because that's what there is to do. So we give them an opportunity to take action, to be a part of something, get what they want short term, and reinforce those positive social norms by showing them in person. Like, here, dude, here's 200 of the people that are on that poster. They're right here at this party. Come on in,
That's so incredible. So what's one of the craziest stories that you have from a party where people are being sober? I can think of a million where alcohol and drugs were involved, of absolute insanity. But I'm assuming just the people getting together in general, what's one of the crazier stories that you've experienced or heard through people that are running the parties?
Dude, it's like, so I can't tell you anything crazy like, the disgusting stuff. Like, it happens, right? Like people are throwing up or people fighting, because that doesn't happen, which is a good thing. But what happens, honestly, you go there and you don't realize that they're not drinking. Like people are yelling at each other. They're talking trash. We're having tournaments, like we're playing games. We're even honestly, like we play a lot of drinking games because they're super competitive and you can team up. So people are just insane. They're crazy at these parties because they're just having a good time. And we've had plenty of parties that have been shut down by the police because we get noise complaints, or the police come by and they don't believe we're not drinking. And we literally have to teach people like, okay, have the website up on your phone, because when the cops come, this is what you need to show them. You're not drinking. Invite them in, like show them you have nothing to fear. And then sometimes, honestly, we call the police beforehand. We say, listen, we're throwing this massive party at this address. We don't want to waste your time. Like, don't stake us out. You don't need to do that. Just come on in. Like, we'll gladly have you in, play a game or grab some Red Bull if you need to stay awake, some pizza. And honestly, the craziest things that happen are just people being themselves, like just being wild, being goofy, dancing together. The dance floor is always packed. People love it. And they're just, dude, it's just talking trash, making friends, having fun. Cause we'll also just like for these games that we have, if we have like a flip cup competition, instead of downing a beer, like we're sponsored by Pizza. So like, just, we're going to flip your cup and you got to eat a slice of pizza. It's like the most hilarious thing to watch. And then it goes down the line. And it's so messy and fun, dude. It's
Like
crazy.
I've done flip cup with energy drinks before, but I never thought about so you have to crush the pizza and then you flip the cup.
Right. Yep, exactly.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Man, and you guys just threw this together, and it's such a cool story of triumph because it didn't work out on your first one, and that's what I love from your story is that you tried something nobody else had ever done before.
Yeah.
Or at least not on a big scale where you can't just point and say, like, how did they do it? Let's dissect it. But you dove in and on paper didn't have that great of a success on the first one. But you guys pivoted and you took notes and what did work, what didn't work. And a lot of people were just wired to be like, man, I stepped outside of my comfort zone and it didn't work. The end.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have even tried that. But you took it and made it work. And then you started growing it and scaling it and getting other people involved. Like, I know for my company, I thought best case scenario, we'll get about 200 customers and I could make this my full-time gig. And we're at like 25,000. So I'd gotten way, way more. Right?
That's awesome.
I 100x'd what I thought was possible. So I'm curious, where did you see this going?
To be truly honest, when it started out, since we had success very quickly, like after the first party, this thing just blew up within a couple months. Like we had big name sponsors. We were getting hundreds of students to our parties. I was getting these messages from schools. So I don't know what I would call it, but in denial and bliss and ignorance, I was like, dude, I am going to be rich. I'm going to travel the world. I'm going to like impact people's lives. It's like just going to start flooding in. And what I didn't realize is, dude, you're building a business. It's going to take time. So I had this huge dream right away. Like, we're going to start this national platform. It's going to be in every state, every student, who's like me at the school, because they're out there, they're just going to find me and start throwing these parties. And what I realized is that no one knows about you. Like, that's what I realized. Like, you're obsessed with yourself, Jake. Like, you love this idea. It's great. And you've impacted this small bubble, but it takes a lot of work to bring it to a new bubble because you have to answer all the questions. You have to answer the skeptics. You've got to figure out, how do you actually pay yourself on this model? So I'm 6 years into this idea. Just last year, learning about this new model of using speaking. I had tried charging schools to come to just start a chapter and throw a party. And honestly, that created a lot of barriers. I tried the nonprofit model, which was successful, but it burnt me out. I did not like it. I hated my job, even though the model was good. I didn't like my daily job anymore, and I wasn't having time to impact students. We went on this national tour where we basically traveled around the country in this trailer, just validating the idea again, because I had kind of lost hope. And I had thought, I need to quit this thing because it's not working the way I thought it would. And I just need to do something to prove that it still works, or I need to get out, because realizing that it's not going to work. And every time I do that, I go back to, all right, students are showing an interest in this. The world needs it. I just need to go through these hard things to make it happen. But then, on that national tour, realizing, even though these last methods didn't work, maybe this next thing is the one that's going to, and you try that. And speaking is the model, I found out.
Drinking and drugs, was that part of your story, or was it just you saw your uncle and you were just like, I don't want to go down that road? Like, your sobriety date of May 1st, 2012, was there a story behind that, or was that just happened to be the last time that you drank and you've just embraced this life?
Yeah, I think starting out watching my uncle, I was like, I'm going to be sober for life. And seeing my parents, they gave up drinking when we were born. So watching how much fun they had was really impactful to say, all right, I don't need it. It's all about my friends. It's all about what I do. I can get creative to have fun. But then I think there was a bit of insecurity in college, seeing everybody that I thought everybody was doing it. And then imagining myself, because I wanted to make an impact this way, imagining myself, speaking from a platform or influencing someone and saying, hey, you don't need this. And them saying, well, Jake, have you ever tried it? I think that was a little insecurity for me, enough to say, all right, I should at least try it. And so honestly, I think I drank 3 times in my life. One, I went to an internship in North Carolina. I had moonshine for some reason.
There's a starting point.
I know. And it was like, I remember when I was drinking, I was like, I like this buzz. This feels good. And then I think when I came home a second time, I drank with some buddies just to kind of try it again. Like it'd been 6 months or something. And then on my 21st birthday, I drank. And I remember those other times though, I was like thinking, sure, I felt good, but it didn't bring out the best in me. I was more outgoing. I was learning things about being social when I was sober. Whereas when I was drinking and I was tipsy, it was easy for me to just sit on the couch, not meeting new people, not getting out of my comfort zone and having fun doing that. And I was like, I should have more fun pursuing people, showing them love and acceptance and starting games and being the life of the party. If I can do it in my own mind, I should learn to do that because I'm getting kind of good at it now. And I don't want to give that up. So once I made that decision, so that's kind of where the date came from in 2012 was when that was the period of maybe 6 months that I just tried drinking and decided that it was still not worth it for me to continue doing based on what I want to do with my life. And now it's just basically a principle of, hey, if young people can see somebody, have an example of somebody who went throughout their life without drinking and enjoying it, then I want to be that person. Like that's definitely worth it for me.
Awesome. So what's one piece of advice you could give business owners that such by doing it will make everything else easier or unnecessary in their business?
Wow, it's a tall order. Let's think on that. My instinct goes to stand out. Don't worry about fitting in. Like anything
Perfect.
You can do to stand out with your business to disrupt things is going to be worth it, just because you're going to learn from it more than doing anything of the smaller things that maybe other people are doing, and you're going to capture the attention of your right market, the
Awesome.
people that generate with you.
That's awesome. All right, Jake, in wrapping up, where can people find out more about you and your companies?
You can go to Party.0.org, or you can go to Vive18.com, and that's VIVE18.com. And then we're on Instagram as well. So yeah, Party.0 on Instagram and Vive18_ on Instagram.
Awesome. All right, Jake. Well, we'll have all those in the show notes. Thank you so much for being on Self-Made and Sober. I know I got a ton out of your story and your experience, and it's really great to see, young people who are making a difference and disrupting the party scene of all places in sobriety. So it's awesome what you're doing. And until next time, thanks for being on the show, Jake.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you so much for listening to Self-Made and Sober. Be sure to join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/SMC Mastermind, like Self-Made Coaching Mastermind. I hope you enjoyed the show, and be sure to subscribe and rate the show so you can get notified each Friday when we put out a new episode.